All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am Is the Reno.
Is the Reno one else? Is there anyone else?
And today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about red flags. Now, as we get older, as we get more experienced in life, we notice certain things in maybe a video game or a person's personality that when we see it again in the future, we kind of know what to expect, right? It's a defense mechanism. And one of my personal red flags is if I'm having conversations with people and they attempt to always turn the conversation to something about them, I know I'm probably not going to relate to them too much. I just understand that from my perspective and seeing it so many times. Another red flag that I never really thought about but makes sense in hindsight is if somebody has 1,000 bottles of lube hidden around their house. These are just things you need to recognize and avoid in the future. Now, I've been playing MMOs for the last 10 years, and I have also developed red flags for MMOs. And I wanted to talk to you guys about this because for Ashes of Creation, before I even got into the game, they have answered most of my red flags up front. They've talked about them, they've highlighted them as issues, and talked about how they're going to be different. And I wanted to talk about how Ashes of Creation has solved most of my red flags, and the biggest one that hadn't been answered yet, I was able to ask Steven Sharif myself during Mine and Nice Gaming's Voices of Vera podcast. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Red flags in MMOs and what Ashes of Creation is doing to fix it. So let's dive into it. Number one, pay to win. I'm not a huge pay to win guy. I've played pay to win games in the past. They can be fun. They can be competitive. I just am not interested in that feeling where you finally catch up and your skill finally trumps somebody being able to spend lots and lots of money to be better than you. I like that point, and then the game basically pushes the gear level a little bit further down the hill, and then they just throw more money at the problem, and then you go back and you start all over again. There's nothing wrong with it. Some people really like that. I'm just tired of doing it. That's just me personally. I would rather play a game where there's a lot more skill, where there's a lot more skill involved, and no pay to win is important to me. And Steven Sharif and Intrepid have come out and said that this game will not be pay to win.
No pay to win whatsoever, no pay to convenience, no buying expanded, inventory slots or additional character slots, like those types of things either.
Number two, I want a challenging world environment. Some of the other MMORPGs I've played in the past have been really easy. There's a huge world to explore. There's a lot of things to run around to and go to and everything, but everything's so easy to beat. Everything's so easy to kill. It really takes a lot of the fun out of playing in a game when things are too easy to do. And what Alpha 2 has shown me so far is that this is a challenging world. It's so challenging that it really behooves you to run in a group. It really benefits you to run with a few people and go around and explore together because you don't have everything in your kit. You need things from other people. Right now in the alpha, a bard is huge. A bard is so important for resource sustain for your group, for survival, for utility. If you want big heals, a cleric is really valuable. If you want to get the big mob pulls, a tank is really valuable. These support style classes are immensely valuable in this game right now, and it means that characters have value. And so all this is really important to me, and Intrepid has answered that so far with their Alpha 2. Number three, cash shop. I know some people cringe at the thought of a cash shop, but I personally do not care if a game has one. We all have our own specific criteria on what we want a game to have. For me, cash shop's not a big deal. Where I draw the line, though, is if the cash shop dominates in-game cosmetics.
There are over 500 total mounts available in ESO. Mounts are very important to players, and they seem to be the most popular cosmetic item, and some of them can look pretty cool. They have shiny effects, cool sounds, bright colors, and come in all different shapes and sizes, from horses to dwarven constructs to guar, and everything in between. When collecting data, I put the mounts into two categories. Mounts you can buy from the crown store or you get from crown crates, and mounts that you can earn through gameplay from achievements, events, daily rewards, or purchased with gold. So we have over 500 mounts total, right? Well, only 5% of these mounts are free. No, trust me, I am not bullshitting you. That means 95% of the mounts available in ESO are paid for with real money, and that's the only way you can get them.
At that point, I think there's an issue. I think there's a very far-leaning issue of really trying to monetize in-game appearances, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I just want it to be competitive. I want for every one piece that exists in the cash shop to also have a competitive piece exist in the world. So if people want to grind and get really cool gear from completing stuff, and they want to brag about what they've completed by wearing the armor from that area, they should be able to do so. It should be unique. It should stand out. If people want to hop in and they say, hey, this cloak looks really freaking cool, I want to wear this, you should be able to do that too. And so that's just my personal opinion. Now, what is Ashes doing in this regard?
God, I hate calling out games, but I will call out BDO. BDO does great things. I love BDO. It's a very good, well-done game. But one thing I couldn't stand about BDO, I'm fortunately to say this, is that you look like trash unless you spent money in the cosmetic shop. That sucks, to be fair. And take that feedback, obviously, with a grain of salt. However, what I would say is, in Ashes of Creation, there is going to be legendary cosmetics that can be earned and achieved in the game, through the game systems. But that's going to take a significant amount of effort and work, okay? And that is those cosmetics are going to be on par with the cosmetics offered in the marketplace, okay? Now, with that being said, there are different types of players that exist within MMOs. There are casuals and there are hardcores. Not as unfortunate as this is to say, we as a demographic, as an MMORPG community, we are an aging group of people. And as long as the cosmetic doesn't present an in-game advantage, some people love collecting cool-looking cosmetics, and they may not have the time that the in-game provides as a gate to that progression. So the key is to provide both the in-game means to look, what's the word, fabulous, for some flair, as well as a cosmetic shop in place as well.
They want to make sure that although there is an in-game cash shop, although there is stuff that you can purchase, there are competitive cosmetics that will exist in the game. Number 4, incentivized PvP. Now, too often in the past, when I have played MMORPGs, it feels like PvP is often an afterthought. Even in games where it's supposed to be at the forefront. They throw it in there. They say, hey, you have your arenas, you have your battlegrounds, you have your open world, you have whatever. You should be happy. We're never going to make updates. We're never going to make improvements. You have it. Go play it. Enjoy. We're never discussing this again. We are going to focus on the cash shop. And it's disappointing. It gets really disappointing because PvP can be fun. PvP can be fun for years in a really fun, replayable environment. It can be really enjoyable. It can continue to bring players back into your space. And the more hours they're playing and enjoying your game, the more likely they might be to, buy something from the cash shop or invest in something in the game. And those player loops are important. Now, too often in the past in other MMORPGs, I've had to do everything else in order to PvP. I had to go do trials to PvP. I had to go do dungeons to PvP. I had to go learn how to craft gear in order to PvP. And when I PvP'd, it was, if I wanted to make gold, that wasn't the best way to make gold. There was better ways to go about doing it. There was no incentivization in order to actually participate in the game. Now, what Ashes has is they have a lot of incentivized PvP, where you're rewarded for being good at it. If you have this group of people that built a node and, they're being assholes and not sharing things and basically, you're not on correct terms with their guild because of guild interactions and everything. Going down the line, you could topple over their node. Or you could engage in guild wars. Or you could engage in a node war where you can take something specifically from another node to benefit your node. So if you're good at PvP, you're benefiting your node by being able to do these things. And then my favorite, of course, is caravan PvP, where the game is incentivizing players to take these caravans out and run them to other nodes to make more gold. But at the same time, you have to be good at it. If people are going to attempt to sack your caravan, you could potentially lose everything that you have in your caravan, and you could lose those resources, and you could lose those things. And so there's a big monetary reward for running these caravans to make a lot of gold. And so I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool that in this game there are multiple different forms of incentivized PvP. Now, number 5, the question that I asked, the one that still hangs in the balance with Ashes of Creation for me, and the one that I was hoping to hear a good answer on, was the discussion on balance. Now, I know, because I saw from the chat, I saw from different comments, people immediately thought I meant specific class balance, which is not the case, okay? I understand that that scary B word just upsets people to no end, because typically what balance means is taking away the fun, right? You're nerfing people's classes. You're bringing everybody's classes down to something that is bad. Oftentimes in other MMORPGs where you have one class really powerful, really strong, everybody complains about how strong it is, it gets nerfed, and then the another class goes, hey, you nerfed them, you now have to nerf this one because this one is even stronger than that one. This one's stronger than that one now, and because it's stronger, it needs to be below this. And so it becomes a race to the bottom to where all of a sudden every class and every archetype in games is not fun. This is not what I'm talking about, okay? I understand. I just wanted to clear that caveat that I understand where a lot of people are coming from on this. What I'm talking about is, how is the game going to value your time? And what I mean is, this is a rock, paper, scissors game, meaning that each class is supposed to have different strengths and different weaknesses, which is a really cool design thought. No longer in this type of game will there be a race to the bottom. No longer will they'll just be nerf this, nerf this, nerf this. It'll be like, hey, a fighter's supposed to destroy a cleric, hypothetically, right? As in a rock, paper, scissors example. Paper is supposed to destroy rock. Rock is supposed to destroy scissors. You're supposed to have these weaknesses. And in that way, each class has its own strength. And so that race to the bottom doesn't necessarily exist in this game. However, what does exist is situations where rock might not be strong enough versus scissors. The example I brought up was in the Elder Scrolls Online. At one point in time, you could choose to be a vampire. And being a vampire gave you a lot of mitigation at lower health. It was very strong. And the negative for it was, because you were a vampire, you were more susceptible to fire damage. You took a lot more fire damage. However, in actuality and through testing and looking at everything, even if you were a vampire, you took less damage to fire damage than if you were a non-vampire. And so that risk never existed. It then just became a strength. And so everybody chose to be a vampire for years because it was that powerful. And so in a rock, paper, scissors environment where a strength isn't strong enough, where rock can't be scissors, for instance, what ends up happening is rock has a weakness to paper. It's supposed to, but now rock can't beat scissors. So in a rock, paper, scissors environment, rock doesn't have a place. It doesn't have a strength, and it has too many weaknesses. It's just bad. And so everybody that's playing rock, they're going to go, okay, do I want to continue to be bad? Do I want to continue to have no effect, no impact, no outlook on the game? Or do I want to re-roll a new character? You then suffer from some retention. This game is going to have a longer grinding experience. Players may not necessarily want to spend 200 hours rolling a new character if they know that potentially this character could be bad for a year or 2 years or however. They may not want to do that. They want to be a strong, powerful orc. They don't want to be a wizard. And so you're going to lose some players that way that don't get to play their classes the way they want and have an impact. And that's going to happen every once in a while. That's going to happen in patches, but it's how quickly a team adjusts and says, hey, we value your time, we value your experience in whatever class you want to play. We want to make sure that your strengths, how are we going to identify to make sure that this happens? So in this hypothetical situation that I brought up, where rock can't beat scissors, some people are going to quit. Other people will roll scissors. And what they're going to do is they're going to go, okay, well, in order to beat scissors, I have to be scissors. I don't have any weakness to rock, like I'm just going to be scissors. And so now you have a scissors versus paper environment, right? And paper has a strength. Paper has a strength. It crushes rock. The only problem is that no more rocks exist anymore. And so all the papers are looking at this and they're like, guys, we're getting hard countered by literally the rest of the game. everybody else just hard counters us. Why are we going to choose to be this? There's nobody for us to actually have a counter versus. Everybody else is freaking scissors. And so now we have to roll scissors. And so what you end up have happening is you suffer some retention issues. You suffer from a severe game imbalance. And so the question I had to ask was, how do you identify those situations to where you have these lopsided areas? How are you going to go about doing that? And what are you going to do in a situation to where this happens? So what type of developer tools are you going to use? New World did a really good job with this, where they had win-loss records for their weapons, for instance. And so they had win-loss records in Outpost Rush, they had win-loss records in their arenas, and they had win-loss records in wars. And so what they would do is, if people were complaining about a weapon, like, yeah, Greatsword is really killing me, they could go in and they could look at these different areas, large scale, medium scale, and small scale PvP, and go, the win rate for the Greatsword is about even with everybody else's. For you, this is just looking at the numbers. It's not giving an inherent advantage over the thousands of people playing relative to everybody else. This is probably a learn to play issue for you. Or they could go in and they go, hey, Musket is destroying me. This is awful. I can't survive. And they go in and look, and Musket has a huge advantage in Outpost Rush and Wars. And they look at it and they're like, wow, this weapon is winning 2 to 3 times the amount more than all of the other weapons. This is a problem. We need to go in there and make adjustments. And so they use these developer tools in order to potentially identify issues and complaints, because players are going to complain no matter what. And some of them will be justified. Some of them will not be. How do you filter that, right? How do you filter the reasonable complaints from the unreasonable? And what plan do you have to make sure that you're saying, yeah, right now your class isn't very good, but we have the tools to where we're going to make adjustments relatively quickly within a patch, right? Within a quarter, a couple months, your class will be back up and running and back online. We value your time. You've put 500 hours into this character. You shouldn't just not play it, right? And so that was my point on balance, is how do they address these issues to show to the players that they value their time and investment into leveling a character? Why would you want to go to endgame if you have to work towards endgame another time and then another time? And then you get to a point where you're like, they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep doing this. They don't have a plan for this. At some point, do I want to level my 5th character, or do I just want to play something else? And so that's what my question was about. Here's what Steven Sharif had to say. Okay, this is a long one, Steven. I'm sorry, but this is like, if I were given one question to ask to you, this is my one. So I'm shooting my shot as well as possible. But I'm a huge believer in good process leads to good results. And I really like your 64 class system. I really like that it has rock paper scissors mechanics. And I think too often in other MMOs, classes often get the nerf hammer to a point to where they become unplayable in content. They'll just get removed for a patch or for forever. And the main reason we play MMOs as players is to have our classes feel powerful. And I think Ashes should be a lot more resistant to getting nerfed because the game is designed for each class to have strengths and weaknesses. However, in other games, Nice and I haven't encountered an issue where you could choose to be a vampire, for instance, and the bonus was higher mitigation at the cost of increased flame damage. However, in actuality, the flame damage bonus wasn't high enough, and it just like you just had more mitigation everywhere. And so the choice became be vampire or, be outclassed. And so what I am wondering is, how will your team look to identify and adjust a skill or class when the rock is no longer beating scissors?
With all things balance, first and foremost, with a game as systems heavy and integrated as ours, perspective needs to be holistic. And a lot of times, when you lose sight of that holistic approach, you can end up in situations where the meta that you just described is a non-choice factor for the player. And, at that point, you need to ask yourself from a design standpoint, what is our goal? What is the goal that we're looking to provide? Is 8-player agency the goal? And in which case, choice should matter. And that means there has to be alternative options. And that those alternative options weighed against the holistic perspective
need to be valid and have a place that they fit within the rock, paper, scissors design approach. I think that with our class system, the goal is to deliver a class fantasy that fits the design of a rock, paper, scissors Trump system, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so, to a degree, that actually gives our designers an easier job, because when something is, quote, out of balance, it depends in which direction the out of balance is within, right?
Exactly.
Meaning
Yeah.
does it play towards the arc of what that role is meant to provide in the rock, paper, scissors design, in which case that's a good thing, right? Potentially, that's a good thing. It depends on how it stacks against the other aspects of different abilities, which are meant to exist within the arc of those rock, paper, scissors designs. So I think, it's difficult to give an answer that's specific, because the use case is a very broad one when we're talking about balancing design. But ultimately, I would say that it's done in a holistic environment, and it is usually done in concert with some rubric we're using in order to anchor our design choices.
Sure. Yeah. So to go off this a little bit more, one of the MMOs that we've played in the past, they were very responsive to complaints, where it was like, hey, this is too strong, nerf this, you got to nerf this. And it almost felt like each patch was reactive to complaints. And then other games we played, it was like, hey, we hear your complaints about this. Our back-end dev tools show us, like, we can evaluate wars, we can evaluate large-scale PvP, we can evaluate this. We see that this class is overperforming because they're winning way more. And so they were able to identify in this other game that, like, hey, these look to be overperforming. Now we're going to dive deeper in. We're gonna dig further down in and evaluate further.
Sure. I mean, that's part of the holistic approach, right? What you just described was feedback. Now, you don't want feedback that you're getting ping-ponged off of, patch after patch, in which case the players start to get whiplash. Okay, I can't plan anything around my class design. I can't build towards itemization progression, because who knows when you're going to rip the rug out from under my, choices that now take, potentially hundreds of hours in order to achieve. So I think there is a level of diligence that's required on the development team to ensure that when inspecting the feedback provided from a player population, that the feedback is in line with the goals of the design team, that the player population is working in concert with those goals and understands those goals because it's clearly communicated to them. And then additionally, that sentiment is always rooted and validated in data. And data is a critical component of ensuring that your design adjustments are having the effect you intend. It cannot be rooted in anecdotal evidence provided by player sentiment, because in those situations, louder voices can have a broader influence. So it's a combinatorial approach between this holistic view of player engagement and data-centric analysis.
So as you can see, I think some of my questions were answered. I personally would have wanted to hear a few more nerdy things. I would have wanted to hear a little bit more about developer tools and the things they have, but I didn't want to come outright and ask that. I didn't want to lead the discussion. I wanted to just ask an open-ended question and hear what his answer was. I wanted to leave it from his point of view, without directing the answer that I wanted to hear. And so I tried to keep it open-ended. I feel like I got the vast majority of what I wanted. I wanted to hear that they would look into it from the back end. They want to have each class or archetype to have an identity and make sure it's fulfilling its role as an identity. And that's a big point. And like I said, like if fighter is hypothetically supposed to kill cleric and it's not on a large scale situation, and you have developer tools in the back end that are showing that, you need to go in and look at the fighter kit, or you need to go in and you need to look at the cleric kit, and you need to go, okay, this class is supposed to be susceptible to fighter's bleeds. Why is it not? Why is this not working? What is going on this give-take situation? And so I thought it was good. Like I said, I would have liked to hear numbers more, but they very well might not be at that point. And that's okay. But overall, the vast majority of my red flags in MMORPGs are answered. It's just now, is this game going to be fun? Is this end game going to be fun when everything's online, when they finally have everything up and running? Is the game going to be fun? Right now, I am having a blast at Alpha 2. It is, I haven't had this much fun logging onto a game in a long time. It is so much fun to hop on, and I'm just grinding mobs. I'm getting the occasional PvP. I haven't even gotten into getting the stuff that I want to yet. The world is so challenging, and it's so much fun, and it keeps you on your toes, and random things happen that catch you off guard. You mess up your rotation a little bit, and it's over. And then you have to die, and then you have to work off that experience. You need to do it all over again. And so this entire process has been a lot of fun so far, and the little amount of PvP that I've had has been fun so far. And I'm looking forward to continuing to play this and continuing to see all these things come online and provide feedback. But yeah, overall, I don't have any glaring red flags for Ashes of Creation anymore, and I wanted to talk about it. So I'm gonna end this video here. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If there's any red flag for you that they haven't answered yet, I'd love to hear it. These are just mine. Obviously, you guys have different ones. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.